Every year, universities across the United States receive hundreds of international students in their intensive English programs. Classes in such programs form a microcosm of different languages, beliefs, and cultures. The meeting of people from different countries in one classroom is usually a very exciting experience for students and teachers alike.
Are you thinking of changing?
With so many people from so many different cultures, though, there are naturally bound to be misunderstandings. Why do these occur? And what can we do to avoid or help settle these misunderstandings? We cannot change who we are, but we can try to increase our understanding of others by trying to understand the different cultures we come from. Hello, I'm Betsy Davis, a teacher in the English Language Institute of the University of Pittsburgh. This program is about cross-cultural communication and how our different cultures and their attendant values influence the way we communicate in our everyday interactions. First, we should ask ourselves just what is culture? Culture might most simply be defined as everything you think, do, and say. Culture is how society organizes itself and gives structure to the lives of its members. It also determines how we talk. Most people consider their way of talking natural. In fact, it is culture that determines how we talk, what topics we can talk about, how often we can interrupt each other and when, and also who we look at or touch during a conversation. This program is to introduce you to some different types of conversational systems. We will try to help you understand how and why these different systems operate and what values are behind them. Specifically, we are going to look at the conversational styles of classroom groups of Japanese, Latin Americans, and Saudis solving word problems or puzzles. We have chosen these groups because, although their cultural styles appear to be quite different, there are in fact some common social themes that these three cultural groups share, but manifest differently. We hope that you will not just learn about the communication styles of those three groups, but that you will be able to apply some of the ideas presented here to your conversations with people from any other culture. Think about the interaction style of your own culture and how it affects your conversations with other people. First, we are going to look at the conversational style of people from the Japanese culture. Unlike the other groups considered in this program, Japan is a very homogeneous society. Though there are minority groups in Japan, the overwhelming majority of the country speaks, thinks, and acts Japanese. If we want to understand the Japanese, we need to start where they themselves start, with the group. The Japanese divide themselves into us and them, uchi and soto. In English, the word mother is the same whether you are speaking about my mother or your mother. In Japanese, the words are different because you must give respect to other people's families. You must respect your own family, but you cannot brag about its members. In Japan, people see themselves not so much as individuals, but as members of different groups. Let's begin our look at Japanese group processes by looking at how the members of a group work together.
If he leaves the fox and the chicken together, the fox will eat the chicken.
The teacher is explaining that the task for this group of Japanese students is a puzzle involving a farmer getting a fox, a chicken, and some wheat safely across a river in a small boat. The rules of the puzzle are that only one item at a time can be put into the boat with the farmer. The fox will eat the chicken if they are left alone together, and the chicken will eat the wheat if they are left alone together. Let's see how this group gets the fox, the chicken, and the wheat safely across the river. Notice how at the beginning the group takes its time to get going. There is a lot of silence and seeking of agreement. American teachers who work with Japanese students for the first time are sometimes troubled by the silence and the need to consult together. Perhaps many Americans would just jump into the task and correct mistakes later. The Japanese style is more deliberate, more meditative.
There's no way to carry in a original way or something. So you should think a new idea or something.
As you can see, this group took some time to get going. In any group of Japanese, it is very important to have harmony. You must not anger or upset the people who are close to you. It was worth this group's time to get settled, form a relationship, and then begin. Let's watch another group begin to solve a puzzle. This time, notice the body language and the lack of eye contact, even when they begin to discuss the problem. Groups from other cultures may find the Japanese cold and distant as a result of their body language. To the Japanese, this is simply the polite way to interact with other adults. We saw in the last segment that the Japanese do not converse in the same way as Americans do, but it would be wrong to say that they don't interact with each other at all. In this next segment, observe how the participants work together on the fox, chicken, and wheat problem. They offer each other verbal encouragement. One way the Japanese reflect their emphasis on harmony is through conversations.
Like he gonna bring chicken.
Okay, chicken.
And chicken is here. And fox and wheat. And he gonna go back.
With chicken?
No, with.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And this time he gonna bring fox. It's him, fox. And fox is here. The fox and chicken. And here.
Fox and the chicken.
Yeah. And here is wheat. This side, he have still wheat, so he have to come back here. So he cannot be.
When you speak in Japanese, it is considered very appropriate to finish another person's sentence.
Fox
Would eat the chicken?
Yeah. So he bring back the chicken with him and leave chicken here, and he bring the wheat.
In English, the same thing is done, but only when the people are very close friends.
And go back.
The Japanese have a saying, "The nail that sticks up gets hammered down." This means that people should not try to be better than others or draw attention to themselves, but rather they should try to get along. People want to be anonymous, so sometimes they don't take chances. This makes Japanese people seem shy, but they really aren't so shy. Their idea of how and when to speak out, however, is determined by their attitude toward the importance of the group. The group and the group feeling is the most important consideration, not the feelings and needs of individuals. Let's finish our discussion of the Japanese style by watching the solution of the fox, chicken, and wheat problem. While you are watching, notice the relatively confined body language of the Japanese. Think of how the individual and the group interact, and how the group takes precedence over the individual.
Yeah, each time bring something.
With him back.
So first chicken.
Yeah, I got it. Chicken first, and he comes back, and he take a weight, and chicken. He brings chicken back, and then fox to the, and then last chicken again.
Yes.
We got it. Yeah, so first chicken, and then he comes back, and then he brings a wheat, and when he
Decide.
he take chicken with him back, and then fox with it, and then last chicken.
That's it. Very good.
As we have seen, the Japanese style of communication is more meditative and places emphasis on the group and group harmony. Individuals are less important. The Japanese conversational style is slower paced with a deliberate turn-taking, while others in the group offer verbal encouragement. In contrast to the Japanese style of conversation, let's take a look at the much different conversational style of people from the Latin American culture. What do we mean by Latin America? The area encompasses almost all of South America and Central America and much of the Caribbean. Latin America is a very large and diverse area that in many ways is hard to make meaningful generalizations about. Before the Europeans arrived, there were several large and highly developed indigenous groups known to us as the Incas, the Aztecs, and the Mayans, plus many smaller groups throughout the Americas. The early Europeans who settled there, mostly Spanish and Portuguese, came to the New World in search of adventure and the fabled wealth of the Americas. As all settlers do, these settlers brought with them the values of their native cultures. These values have blended with those of the native peoples to produce a new culture. What are the cultural values that affect how Latin Americans communicate? Let's start with the concept of personalism. For Latin Americans, personal contact is very important. We are nothing if we are not connected with others as much and as closely as possible. Physical contact is important. People like to touch each other on the arm, hand, or shoulder. Men often put their arms around other men's shoulders. Men and women both frequently touch the arm of the person they are speaking with. The personal space between people is generally closer than North Americans feel comfortable with. Eye contact is also important. Latin Americans look into each other's eyes often and for long periods of time during conversation. Look at this segment of the tape. Notice that the students are sitting in a loose circle separated from each other. What do you notice about their personal space and their gestures?
With the fox on the other side. And the fox is gonna eat the chicken.
But if you go first, well, chicken.
First chicken.
All right.
Uh-huh. And the fox is gonna be with the
First
wheat.
chicken.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter.
You probably noticed that the students gradually moved in toward each other as they became more involved in the puzzle. They leaned forward toward the center. Almost all of them reached into the space of the person who was writing on the desk. But notice that they didn't just reach over to point, they left their hands on his desk until at one point there were 3 hands on the desk. Notice also how the student in the green shirt leaned forward so much that he was resting his elbows on the desk of the student to his left. This is common in Latin America because physical contact and physical closeness is important to Latins. Personalism manifests itself in people's conversations. This affects turn-taking when people are talking, for example, and how often people interrupt each other, how often 2 or more people are talking at the same time. Watch this next section of video. What do you notice about their speaking? What is the pattern of interrupting? Who interrupts whom, how often, and when? And how does the interrupted person react?
The chicken first.
Chicken first.
Yeah.
And then whatever.
Doesn't matter. The way the chicken is gonna eat in the other side.
Exactly.
Not the
That's right.
If he takes like the chicken first, and then
If he go to the other side, he can put the
No,
chicken
put in the other
in his house.
You probably noticed that the turn-taking pace is very fast. Latin Americans expect to change turns quickly, be interrupted, and interrupt often. So people are not offended at being interrupted.
And you buy a lot, he eats a lot, and he's not going to eat the chicken. That's true.
This is quite different from the Japanese style of conversation, where the pace of turn-taking is much slower and people do not interrupt each other. The Japanese complete sentences for each other, but only after the speaker pauses first. A topic for Latin Americans that is closely linked to personalism is dependence. In Latin America, children usually live with their parents until they get married, no matter how old they are at that time. People rely heavily on family members for help in all kinds of matters. To be dependent and to be depended on is viewed as a positive value. When you are dependent, you are someone. You reaffirm the need for personal contact, the fact that you do not live in this world as an isolated individual. Many Latin Americans see American independence, for example, the desire for young adults to have an apartment on their own, or the preference of many elderly to live alone independently, as a very lonely thing. In the classroom, we can see the effects of the value of dependence in the area of homework. Homework in Latin America is very often a cooperative affair, done as a group, whereas in North America it is usually a solo effort. In Latin America, sharing answers is seen as helping each other, while North Americans see it as cheating. In addition to the value of dependence, Latin Americans place great importance on the value of personal dignity, la dignidad de la persona. Each person has his own value and worth and must be respected. For this reason, everyone in the group must be listened to because each person's opinion is deserving of respect. Watch the following tape segment. This group of students is trying to decide the best arrangement of guests at a dinner party. What happens to the person on the left?
But do you think that, because here we have in number 2 that members of the same family should not sit next to each other. Yes, sorry, what? Yeah, sorry.
But I don't understand when they say sit next to each other, it means, but when we are sitting in front, it's not next.
In my opinion.
The three students on the right were discussing the problem together, and the student in the orange shirt was left out. As soon as he started to say something, however, the others in the group immediately turned to include him into the circle. One other cultural value must also be considered when discussing Latin Americans: the value of verbal ability. Spanish speakers are proud of their language, of its long, well-respected literary and oratory traditions. And a person who is able to use Spanish well, who can deliver a finely worded speech or make a clever joke, is given extra respect because of this ability. In class, Latin Americans often make jokes. This has two purposes. It gives prestige to the joke maker, and it reaffirms the personal ties of the group. In fact, Latin Americans enjoy very much laughing with each other as another aspect of their personal ties.
Describe the marriage arrangement. I don't like marriage.
In this last segment, notice how many times a joke is made. How did the others in the group react to the jokes?
But you just want to put the wheel in the other side. It doesn't matter it's in the stomach of the chicken.
Right, but if you buy a lot of food for the fox, a lot, and the
Fish.
fish, and you buy a lot, he eats a lot, and he's not going to eat all the chicken. That's true.
That's a good idea.
He's full.
But the fox will eat the chicken.
Well, you put the chicken
In the bathroom.
in the bathroom.
Several jokes were made. After each one, the others in the group laughed and then added to the joke with more jokes of their own. We have seen in this tape examples of several different values: personalism, dependence, personal dignity, and joking. These are all closely related and together contribute to a conversational style that includes many quick changes of speakers and support for each person in the group. Now let's look at our third group, students from the Saudi Arabian culture. Why do the Saudis do the things they do? This question can only partially be answered because of the complex tapestry of Arabian social dynamics. The Arabs have not had a common history in the 20th century, and their outlooks are quite different. Even though many of the forthcoming illustrations of cultural values can be generalized to Arabs as a whole, they are based on information about Saudis specifically. With this in mind, then, we can look at key cultural concepts that are important to the Saudis and see how they translate into group dynamics. The first concept is hierarchy. For Saudi men, there is always someone above them who has power to influence their lives, be it father, teacher, tribal head, or king. These power holders are given respect because of their inherent positions. Everyone else has to earn a leadership role, and the ensuing respect it brings through displays of brilliance, wit in language, high morals, physical prowess, or assertiveness.
But he can't take the fox and the chicken. The fox will eat the chicken. He can't take the chicken and the wheat. The chicken will eat the wheat. How does he get all three things from one side to the other?
Look at this group of Saudis who have just been given the fox, chicken, wheat puzzle to
Only
solve.
one thing at a time.
What we will first see is how competition for leadership evolves within the group.
No, it's not easy. Let's see.
He can leave chicken and take.
Notice how the man in the bright blue shirt immediately begins to exert authority. See also how the man on the far left tries to interact by putting his hands on the desk. What you have just seen is the initiation of a competition between the man in the bright blue shirt and the man on the far left for leadership of the group. When the man on the left saw his friend acting competitively, he decided to try to solve the puzzle himself. Thus, the race for leadership has begun between the two. Let's look at another aspect of this interaction, the competition for leadership.
I'll tell you something, guys. No, I'll tell you something. He will take the chicken, okay, and cross it to the river, okay? No, and he get back, okay? He will take the fox. Wait. He will take the wheat, okay, and get back, and take the chicken back.
Here the man in the bright blue shirt got an insight into the puzzle solution and gathered attention with his hands and voice.
Alone? Yes. Okay,
He then began to think aloud, making several errors along the way. He continued to hold the floor by saying no, no, and wait, thereby preventing others' attempts to lead the group. The assumption of leadership in a group situation is a major face-gaining tactic, which is what makes leadership so prized and therefore struggled for. As we have seen, one-upsmanship is a favorite technique. The man in the bright blue shirt decided to push for a solution, even, as we will now see, a solution that was not fully crystallized in his mind, in order to be the one who controls the solution, and therefore the group.
Wait, let me say it again, because I don't
No,
wait. He will take the chicken first, okay, and get back. Okay, take the wheat, okay, get it back. Okay, and take the chicken with him, get back, and take the fox. And get back.
It's okay.
You should have noticed how the man in the bright blue shirt used the group to help him solve the puzzle, but took credit for its solution in the end. He gained face, which added to his personal dignity. But as you will now see, gaining personal dignity is a balancing act, which needs to be tempered with the consideration of the personal dignity of equals or superiors. Notice how the man in the bright blue shirt who found the solution allows his friend, the man on the left, to present the solution to the teacher, thereby allowing his friend, who had struggled for the leadership of the group, to maintain his own personal dignity.
First, he takes chicken.
The final concept of interest is group identity, which is intertwined with the notions of hierarchy and personal dignity. Group identity takes two forms in Saudi society. One situation is in dealing with non-Saudis, when the us versus them group identity phenomenon is emphasized. This can be seen in the protection of Saudi women from contact with foreigners inside the kingdom, and the tendency for Saudis to only socialize with each other outside of it. An apparently contradictory situation is found among groups of all Saudis, because the group is then defined according to family ties, the next level in the hierarchy. If there are no family or friendship ties to hold a group together, there is little group cohesiveness. The group looks more like a collection of individuals than anything else. This last phenomenon can be seen in the following video clip. In it, you will see Saudis together who feel no obligation to each other as a group. The students who don't talk aren't consulted for their opinions. In fact, the few attempts to speak are overridden by the man asserting himself as leader.
I'll tell you something. He will take the chicken, okay, and cross it to the river, okay? No, and he get back, okay? He will take the fox. Wait. He will take the wheat, okay?
As you saw, the one man's assertiveness goes unchallenged, which results in the other group members becoming his audience. The Saudi group identity varies according to the composition of the group, the task the group is presented with, and who the group is answering to. Another example of the us versus them phenomenon is when Saudis deal with outsiders. This can be seen in the following clip, when the solution is offered by the group to the teacher.
And come back to take chicken, this solution.
Yes, that's it. He has to bring one back.
Now you can see a unified group of Saudis in which all members agree that their solution is correct.
This is why we got it.
So what we have seen here in the final analysis is a complexly woven system of social interaction among the Saudis that involves primarily hierarchy, personal dignity, and group identity. These are not the only factors involved, of course, but perhaps they are the ones that most directly lead to certain behaviors in the classroom. In the end, though, this discussion can only act as a rough guide for interpreting Arab students' behavior, since, as we have already mentioned, there is quite a lot of variety among Saudis and among Arabs as a whole. In looking at these three cultural groups, we have tried to highlight certain typical characteristics of their social interactions. We have done this by examining the values behind their social interactions. One interesting aspect of these group interactions is the basic characteristics they share, such as face or personal dignity and group cohesion. After looking at each group closely, I think you would agree that these concepts take on different forms in the three cultures. The point is, though, that this commonality among cultures could and should serve as a starting point for cross-cultural understanding and better communication.